light, and what it means to put on that armor of light, right? Truth, and life. These were things we saw, connections with the light, uh, how it is a lamp. God's word is a lamp to our foot and a light to our roadway, and how straight is the gate and narrow is the way, right? But the Lord directs our feet by His word, by the illumination of His word. And so we have His wisdom at work in us. And that is only something that grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's go back to our text. Amen. We should. We're going to start with Romans 13, verse 8. Just kind of remind ourselves, refresh ourselves what we've been studying here together. Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. If there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying. But put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Okay. And so yesterday's conversation really revolved around the armor of light and walking honestly. All right. Let's take a closer look today at verse 13, where Paul gives us this list of 6 things. There we go. Thank you. The first one is the rioting. And something to keep in mind, friends. Remember, Romans 12 and 13 is extremely rich. Not only are we presented with the Father's wisdom and justice, but also the undertones of His love. Or I should say, the overtones of His love. But there's also something going on in Romans 12 and 13 that deals with relationships. Right? Number one relationship is our relationship with our Father. Right? Which we find Paul begins, you could say the seed is planted in Romans 12, 1 and 2. That seed gets planted there for these Romans and for Christians who are like the Romans. Because this is where the concept of presenting our bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable, right? Our reasonable service. This is, and that we would no longer be conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of our minds. This relationship with God now is here addressed. Now, this is what Paul is showing us in Romans 13:13, the things that can come against our godly relationships. And the thing that can come against our godly relationships is this rioting, is number one. Okay. Now, why do I say rioting? Or why does it say rioting? Now, when it says rioting, friends, don't think of what they call rioting today, right? Rioting in the King James Bible is like when the home team wins the pennant or wins the championship, right? And everyone goes out and parties it up, and it's loud, and it's right. Okay, don't think of rioting the way they label it today, where people are vandalizing things and cars are on fire or flags are burning. No. That's something completely different. Rioting is where you just throw caution to the wind. Oh, I don't care what happens tomorrow. It's like a good example would be New Year's Eve, right? New Year's Eve. Oh, it's New Year's Eve. We can get away with anything. We can do whatever we want. Let's all go out and get drunk, right? Think about how things happen on that night. People throw caution to the wind, debauchery, so forth, party time, right? Or think about maybe when the home team wins the game, right? Not that there's certain times where maybe those things, it's time to party, right? There's a time for everything according to God's word, according to Ecclesiastes, right? But we're talking about a riotous manner of life, or riotous living. And last time we went through this, we went to the example of the prodigal son, who gets the father's inheritance, right? Gets his inheritance, and immediately goes out and spends it all on what the Bible calls riotous living, right? Because, and the brother, when he gets home, the brother says he spent all his money on women and, drink and partying it up, right? So then he comes home and the father throws him a party. It gets the brother jealous, or at least envious a little bit there. All right, so rioting, this throwing caution to the wind, or we could say no fear of the consequences of actions. Right? No fear of the consequences. Oh, we go out in a way we did the same thing before when we were born. Exactly, strong. Right? It's how we all lived during that time. Sure, right? Don't fear the consequences. Throw caution to the wind. Might as well eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Right? And you can see how that type of living, right? Especially is the way the world lives, right? Peter's going to tell his people there when he's writing to live not as other Gentiles live, in the vanity of their minds and so forth, right? Okay, so rioting comes against this relationship with God. We need to be wary of this because riotous living does not show that we are loving what is good. It shows that we are actually loving what is bad. Right? And we were already given this principle in Romans 12:9. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. And so riotous living is it is an evil, and it will destroy that godly relationship, that reasonable surface that we have with our Father. Okay, so let's go to the next relationship, friends. Number 2, relationship with self, and this is basically covered in Romans 12 verse 3, where the contrast is made between drunken on self versus godly sobriety. Godly, to think soberly, not drunken on self, not thinking too highly of self, right? And it's interesting that the thing here from Romans 13:13 is actually drunkenness. Right? Drunkenness. Drunkenness comes against this godly relationship we have with self. Right? When you're drunken, you're filled with something, but it ain't the Spirit. Right? When you're drunken, you're filled with something. And quite often we get drunken on self and filled with self and thinking too highly of self. And so this drunkenness will destroy the godly relationship we're supposed to have with ourselves. We're supposed to think of ourselves highly, but not more highly than we ought to think. There's nothing wrong with thinking of oneself highly, as long as you think of your neighbor as highly, and your brother and your sister as highly. In any case, let's go to the next portion. And that's where Paul addresses this chambering. Chambering is basically, shacking up, one night stand. Uh, uh, it goes against the sanctity of the marriage bed, and this is what's going to come against our godly relationship. Number 3, relationship with our fellow saints. Okay? Which is outlined for us. I forgot to put the 3 in there. Which is outlined for us in Romans chapter 12, verse 4 to 8. Right? This is where this information is given. How to defeat that chambering. Because nothing will destroy an assembly quicker than if they're living in that kind of their flesh. Right? If they're living in those kinds of lusts of the flesh, that is going to destroy that assembly. That is going to ruin that assembly. Well, first, their testimony will be completely ruined, right? Before God and before men. Plus, that assembly will not last long. It's not long before there's treachery and betrayal is involved and all kinds of horrible things. You've seen it. You've probably been to churches. You've seen it for yourself. Temporary satisfactions. That's a good one, right? Chambering makes me think of like a certain like a teenager who's fickle. She doesn't quite like this, and well, she kind of likes that, and well, maybe a little bit of this. And, But just like very, I don't know. Maybe I've got the wrong word on that. But there's the chamber. So that's relationship number 3. Number 4 relationship is with enemies. Enemies, as it is outlined in Romans. I also made another mistake there, friends. I put on number 3. I put Romans 12:4-8. That should say 4-16, not 4-8. Okay. But this one, Romans 12 and verse 17-21, right? Relationship with enemies. And so, what is it that's going to come up against that? Well, and I know there's a little. I know there's a discrepancy as to how people interpret this word, but wantonness, when you think of wantonness, he's already talked about sexual impropriety with chambering. Wantonness is coming against our enemies because what you think of, saints, you probably heard the phrase wanton destruction. Like a bunch of teenagers will go into a school, abandoned building, and they'll just destroy it and rip the guts out of it, you know? Wanton destruction. It's unruly. It's unruly behavior. I'm going to destroy it just because I can. Done on wanton. Because they enjoyed tearing down that thing, right? Wantonness. I know. We went through this last time too, but let me show you my. Let's go to Mr. Crab because he's got it. This is from Mr. Webster. Licentious, neglect of restraint, unruly, out of control. Here's another one. Lasciviousness, lewdness, and even sportiveness, scathingness, and waggery. Not sure on that waggery one, but like think about a kid who's got a magnifying glass, right? He goes outside, and there's the anthill. Why does for some reason he's got to go over there and burn those ants with that magnifying glass, right? He's got to do it. It's wanton. It's wanton destruction. It's neglect of restraint. It's lewd. Right? It's unruly. Doesn't care about the punishment with submitting to the old man. That would be wantonness, wouldn't it? Yeah. You can see how each one of these is actually submitting to the old man. And friends, if you don't see it this way, if you see wantonness as something else, hey, I could be barking up the wrong tree on this whole thing. Because there's nowhere in here that says Romans is really about relationships. Nope. Never says it. Never says that Romans 12 and 13 is about relationships. I'm extracting that from the text. As a person, I'm extracting that as out of the text. The same thing with selfless love and loving kindness. Friends, those words never occur in the text that we are examining. They never occur there. But I'm acting it from the text. So, I mean, take this for what it's, take that with a grain of salt. I could be wrong. Right? Check these things out for yourself. And if you don't agree, that's okay. I think it's more important that we look at Romans 13:13 as a warning, right? And really, that's all I'm doing anyway, is just giving us all a good warning about what could come against us, right? And so, I think we would all agree to that Paul's giving us a warning. These things are going to try to come against us. Tess said, I just see a lot of ways to see that word. It could be taken many different ways, couldn't it? Yeah. Come on up stronger. Mic's open.
I was going to wait till you finish with strife and envying, but honestly, John, it's there's a lot of words in here. I mean, wantonness, rioting. But I see where you're coming to agree with you. But what's really standing out in my brain is walking honestly. I mean, I had a whole different definition of that, But I see a definition of how we walk honestly before the Lord, or uprightness, or we walk in righteousness, or we walk in the Spirit. It all ties in. But I see the definition of what it means honestly, to walk honestly. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely agree more. Couldn't agree more. Walking and because that goes back to absolutely. I put on that new man. Like he's gonna build this doctrine is gonna be on greatly when we get over to Ephesians, where he's gonna tell us directly, put on the new, right? We can recognize when we don't. For sure we do. Yeah, for real, yeah. Okay, Taz. Okay. All right. So then there's the fifth relationship. Here, there's that fighting for superiority. Fighting for the upper hand, contending for upper hand, right? Basically, and so this strife, right? Where does strife come from? Strife is an argument, right? But it's an argument that has escalated into its strife comes because one person, or maybe both, is unwilling to submit to the other. I can't suffer it. I'm going under that guy. I can't be around him, right? But you can see how that would destroy the godly relationship with the higher powers, right? Absolutely, just absolutely destroy that godly. Trying to fight with the higher powers for the upper hand, and I'm not going to them. Paul says, "Let every soul be subject." Right? So, all right, and then finally, number 6, relationship with neighbor, and that's basically covered Romans 13, verse 8, down to 14. With our neighbor. And who is our neighbor? Who are our neighbors? Our neighbors is everybody. Just like the Samaritan on the road there that helped the beat up by the robber, in the parable of the good. Right, so our neighbor and what's going to come up against this relationship? Well, envy, which is closely related to covetousness. Covetousness. Envy is where we can't stand to see, like, the neighbor's got a new, right? But it's summertime, it's a hot day. They're out there in the pool. Oh, look at them. They're out there in the pool again. Oh, la-di-da. Letting my light shine, right? Or putting on that armor of light with myself, with the Father in myself. And then I'm going to put it on when it comes to my fellow saints. I'm going to put on that armor of light around them. I'm going to endeavor to do that. And then when my enemies come up against me, I'm going to try to put on that armor of light when they try to reproach me or whatever it might be. And then even with the higher powers, I'm going to try to put that light with them and show them that goodness. And then finally, of course, my neighbor, I want that light, or I could say love, to work no ill. Right? Light or love that works no ill to our neighbor. Okay. All right. So there, Paul's given us the warning. These are what Paul calls lusts of the flesh. In verse 14, he calls them lusts of the flesh, and we're going to cast them off. Cast off. Now, are we familiar with this word, cast off? Huh? Hello, Consuming Fire. Good to see you today. Thanks for joining us. We're looking at Romans 13. Right, cast off. Cast off. Think about, think of it as like a garment. Cast off. Think of it as a garment that keeps being placed upon you. Remember, our flesh is counting upon a lifetime of conformity to this world's thinking, right? The sin in my members is counting on a lifetime of conformity, right? Dirty clothes. Let's go put our dirty clothes on. Come on, right? Yeah. No. We want to cast them off. Indeed. Right? Cast them off. Don't be seen wearing them. Right? Just like dirty clothes, you don't want to be seen wearing them. It's the last thing you want to be seen wearing. Right? People judge you by it, right? Okay. So, casting off those works of darkness, and we're to put on the armor of light. I know we talked about that a lot yesterday. And so now let's go to verse 14. Verse 14.